Hey, cool kids. Welcome back to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Payne. And whether you're listening while walking the dog, mowing the lawn, driving across town, or maybe sneaking in a few quiet minutes with a cup of your favorite tea, I am glad you're here with me. Father's Day is right around the corner. And if you're still wondering what to get that cool dad or grandpa, I've got good news for you. We've stocked up the Cool Grandpa store with apparel, mugs, hats, and gifts designed specifically for the men who are embracing grandfatherhood with style, purpose, and maybe just a little bit of mischief. Be sure to visit cool-grandpa.us and check it out before Father's Day sneaks up on you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every subscription, like, comment, and share helps us reach more grandfathers, more families, and more people who are helping redefine what it means to be a grandparent in today's world. Today, I'm excited to introduce a fellow grandfather who's on a mission that's very close to my heart. Terry Willis is the founder of The Power of Family, an organization dedicated to strengthening family relationships and encouraging meaningful conversations across generations. In our discussion, Terry shares the personal experience that inspired his mission, why family communication matters more than ever before, and how grandparents can play a vital role in bridging generational gaps, healing family divisions, and creating connections with children and grandchildren. One phrase you'll hear throughout our conversation is simple but incredibly powerful: start the conversation. So settle in, pull up a chair, and join me for a thoughtful conversation with Terry Willis, the founder of The Power of Family. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. Hi, Terry. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you on today.
Well, Greg, I want to say to you, Grandpapa, I am excited about being here. It's not just you, it's two Grandpapas here now.
Absolutely. And it's amazing as in this grandparenting space, when we come across people that are doing podcasts or blogs or books, just getting connected and being able to share that wisdom, and not just with each other, but with our audiences.
That is correct, because a lot of what we are doing here is geared towards the audience. We know who we are in our own right. It's just from our learned experience that we are trying to extend this to others and bring their learnings into our space so that we can collectively figure out how this thing works, and we can deliver it to others and help each other.
Absolutely. I always talk about, and we talked about on your show, you become a grandfather and there's really no instruction manual. We just have to look back at what worked with maybe our own grandfather experiences when we were kids growing up, and then maybe borrow from people we see around us. But there's no real instruction manual that you get handed.
And speaking of that manual, I'm going to take us back to something here. It's when you have birth to your first child as a young person. What do they tell you? There is no manual to this.
There isn't. It's
No.
so and coming from a person that has done systems implementations and different things, you like to be able to have structured requirements and structured deliverables and all these things. And every single kid, every single family is so unique that there's way too many variables to even attempt to put it into a manual.
I concur all the way wholeheartedly. And guess what? Even as grandpapas, we're still learning.
Along with that, what I'd love to do, and what I do with a lot of the grandfathers that I have on, is do me a favor and take me back to that moment when you found out you were going to become a grandfather for the first time. What was going on in life, and what was going on in your mind when you got the news that, hey, you're going to be that grandpapa?
Well, of course, I was a younger man at that time. And when I first heard it, of course, I was elated that here I am. My son is now bringing life into this world. But yet, from where I stood at that point in time, I knew that that was a heavy responsibility. It's just not something that you can take lightly. But I just remember having that conversation with him about, if there's anything I can help you with, know that I am there. From my heart, deep down, I am there, because I have always been a family man, a family person. And I knew that him as a younger man, that he was going to have some challenges. And I wanted to avoid him having any challenges that may cause harm to him or anyone around him with his child. Because to me, it's all about being not just a good person, a good neighbor as well. And you raise your kids that way, a good neighbor, a good citizen, and do what all you can to help the society that we live in.
I love that. I think it's really great having that attitude of being that support person, that guide, that instead of, let's say, walking in front of your son, it's at a moment where all of a sudden the son can be walking next to you, and that you're there to be guiding them through as they start to experience some of the things that we went through as fathers.
Yes, because, and I say because, as a grandfather, and him being that parent now, my son, I cannot step into his shoes. It is his parental responsibility to raise the child, his child. It's just I can only be there to assist him where he may needs help. And that's how I view it. But sometimes we know some grandparents, they can get overbearing. We know this, and they want to step into the role as that parent all over again. I've seen it, I've heard it, and it's repeated.
Yeah, and it's as we get into talking about the power of family, we're going to hit on some of that because I think that attitude can lead to some of the estrangement and some of the troubles that we get into with family relations by grandfathers, especially maybe overstepping our roles as advisors to wanting to be back in that role of fixing things and directing things and making things go the way we want.
The way, emphasis added, the way we want. See, that's the, if you can admit to that, then you can have some progress somewhere. It's when you cannot admit to it, and your son or daughter is having issues with you not admitting it, then that's the problem.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I'd like to explore with you a little bit too is, was there ever a moment in your grandfather journey that maybe one of your grandchildren helped to change your view on how your role as a grandfather was unfolding?
Without taking up too much airspace here, yes, there was. And I'm going to share it with you. It was when I took my granddaughter to a recital where she was one of the characters in a play. And as I sat in that audience and I watched her and I watched that play unfold and I saw the role she was playing, and all I could immerse myself in was life passing. This is where it has come right now. I'm seeing my lineage now on that stage where I once saw my son on that stage. Now it is my son's daughter on that stage. It was a moment in time that I can say something happened, something deep and internal happened, where I guess I moved from just being my son's dad to now realizing I have a grandfather role to play, because he wasn't there with us. I took her there, and I lived in another state, but every time I would come back to Michigan, I would get with the kids. And that time, I had to step in and be that guardian. And it was just a wonderful experience just seeing her on that stage and knowing what I had done with her father umpteen thousand years earlier.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And I
Yes.
think
So
that's a great way for us to pivot and talk about your organization that you're starting, the power of family. And, every organization, every movement, every business always starts with a story about why you felt this thing needed to come into the world. And I'd love for you to share, what was it about your experience, or what was going on that you felt you needed to bring the power of family into the world?
I had gotten word that one of my granddaughters, she was on social media telling stories about or saying things about what her dad's side of the family isn't doing or aren't doing, isn't doing. And of course, at that time, it was just rumor. But yet, as I internalized this, I said, whoa, what we have here is, we used to call it hanging out the family's dirty laundry. Okay. But here you are, my granddaughter, using this new technology, new vehicle, social media, where I look at as you're looking to get your 5 minutes of fame by just talking out there, putting your thoughts out there, and you are, exposing yourself to people and strangers in which you may never see again, for foremost. But you will see family again. And it hurt me so much that my granddaughter has her sister, and she came to visit me in another state, Virginia at the time. So I had the conversation with her. I said, what is this I'm hearing about your sister saying things out here? She was frank with me. She acknowledged it. And it was like my life stood still. I can remember the moment. And I will never forget it, because of what ran through me is everything I knew about life. They were doing something to tear it down, all that I had been working for them on, and I'm still working for them on putting in their lives. Because to me, if you have an issue with a family member, then you discuss that. You have that conversation with the family member. What is someone on social media going to do for you? Okay, maybe they can give you some advice. I agree. But when it comes to the nitty gritty of it, you will see that family member again and again and again for the rest of your life. You will not see that person out there in social media land. So what happened from that is I internalized what she had shared with me, and I realized at that point in time that I was stepping to something that I knew as the generational gap. What she was saying, and not being said to me directly, is the generational gap not being able to converse with me directly. And it hurt me, because I felt that I was always open to my kid and my grandchildren. But after she had gone back home, I pondered this for quite some time. And then I realized that I'm not the only person who's going through this. Of course I'm not. Grandparents and parents everywhere are going through this. I had heard of this, but it was now on my doorstep. Something else had happened here in time in growing up, where I used to look at those older people and wonder about things like this. It was now at my doorstep, and now I am the elder. But as an elder, as a person who feels that he does all he can to be responsible, I knew that I had to do something. And I kept saying to myself, do something. What can you do? And the idea of the power of family was born. It was born because exactly what I feel that I epitomize, power of family. I'm a family person. That's where it came from. The power of family and what family can do working together as a unit, and not divisively with all this chatter and talk about what someone's not doing for someone else. And when you look at what that talk was all about, you realize how minute it is. So that is what happened. So I at that point in time, I came up with the idea, and I started putting some things together. And what the power of family originated or gave creation to, it was a logo, but it was also brand. And because I'm saying to myself, how do you get your word out there? Okay, I'm in business. I know some things about this. So I came up with the branding of the power of family. And I came up with the idea of the apparel, of course. But as I was putting that e-commerce site together, something else was happening. As I was talking to people in the industry who knew more about this than I did, of course, I began to get a lot of soft chatter, conversation from elders, people as old as I was, young as me. They wanted to talk about what their families were going through. And I'm saying to myself, uh-oh, you recognize what this is. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'm not the only one who's going through this, but people don't openly want to talk about it. So that gave me more impetus to keep moving with this because the signs are now coming to me that what I thought was there is now appearing before me in conversation. Elders like myself and younger telling me about what their families are going through. So now I'm saying, okay, how do I reach people? I don't have the elaborate, media set up for television and all that. Then others began to tell me about podcasting. Well, to me, podcasting was like radio from our days. It was like radio. So I began to learn about podcasting. And sure enough, again, I was having those conversations quietly with individuals telling me about their families and what they're going through. But that is where the power of family was born at. Now I am hell bent on doing all I can to take it to as many places as I can. And I look to get many others to join aboard. I can't do this thing by myself. I'm not working. I'm not the only person here. That's where the power family comes from.
I love it. And it's a little similar to my experience in terms of when I was looking around going, lack of a manual, a lack of whatever. And all I was seeing at that time was the bad grandpa, the grandpas as punchlines, as villains, as whatever. And in their place, in their context, they can be very funny or effective or whatever. But if only people hear about how mean grandfathers are or how checked out they are, they get the wrong impression of us, right? And so as I started this myself, I started hearing from other people, oh, I had the great relationship with my grandfather. And so I realized too that I wasn't alone in this. And then I think we followed parallel lines in terms of starting our podcasts and outreach and that sort of thing. I do want to ask you though, what is, I guess, the main impetus or problem that you're looking to help either strengthen or correct with the power of family?
I can put my finger on it thus far as saying, start the conversation. And I'm taking that as our mantra, as our motto, whatever you want to coin it as. But start the conversation. Without the conversation, there will be no progress. Because everyone will sit idly in their corners, in their far-fetched corners, refusing to budge, refusing to say anything to anyone, as my granddaughter did, except to the wrong people. But yet what she did has led me to where I am and where I am going with this. So that is the one thing I can say here is start the conversation. And I know I'm not naive. I know the family drama and the family dynamics, just for some people, it will not allow them to do it. I get that. I get that. But yet, as elders, as we have walked this journey of life, we know where there is a will, there is a way. And I'm out to figure out, as much as I possibly can, what are those other ways that we can connect those missing unions within family. And I still have work to do it in my own family, for that matter. But sure. I'm heading there.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that we may have had some points where we've become individually siloed. The children, whether it's devices or it's activities or it's something, and then there's assumptions that go on within a family. They're too busy, I don't want to interrupt. And then you don't have those conversations. The distance starts to grow. And it sounds like what you're advocating is like, no, no, no. Those assumptions are just assumptions. They're not truth. Call that person, text that person, sit down, have the conversation, strengthen your bond, strengthen that relationship. And, am I wrong in that, or is that kind of where things are?
That is exactly where things are. But since you mentioned that, strengthen that bond, strengthen that relationship, I must now step into the area of estrangement. I knew of estrangement, but I did not know it's far reaching as it is until I stepped on the path of the Power Family. I have learned that people, and I want to say mostly it's people younger than us, who find a need to just totally estrange or disconnect themselves from their family. I say to myself, wow. But yet again, I know that as people, as family, we have issues. And sometimes those issues can tear us apart. But for so many young people I'm seeing doing this, wow. And I know some may say, Terry, you just don't get it. I do get it. I do not get your particular situation, but I get it. But at some point in one's life who have ventured down this road of estrangement, they need to take inventory of what got them here. It was family. What is taking them along? It will be family. Family in one sense or another. It may be family without DNA. It's still family. But it is the time that we have spent here on earth, and all of our family members that came before us, and the journeys that they took, and where you stand on that timeline of history right now. You are the connection to the future. And you, as a member of your family, how are you going to carry that torch so that your family can carry on with what has gotten you here? I know that may sound idealistic, but it's true until you take time to reflect on that. And for the younger people, we know it may take them some time. I say to them, just think about these things as you move through your days, your weeks, your months, your years. What got you here? What is it going to take to continue your family lineage on now and into the future?
Mm.
It's going to take you, that person.
I love it. And do you think that maybe we've seen our rapid gratification, our disposable society, whatever, have an effect on how younger people might view relationships versus when you and I were growing up? And what I mean by that is that I see sometimes people, younger people especially, view relationships almost as disposable, that if it's not working for me, then severing that relationship and moving on is what you do. And there's circumstances where that's appropriate, but I think with family and close friends, maybe we're inadvertently causing disconnect where there should be tolerance and understanding and maybe time to heal.
You know what that sounds like to me? The generational gap. There it is. The generational gap. They say we don't understand what they're going through. And I say that we were once in that position ourselves, talking about the older people. They don't understand what we're going through. So, but here we are today with all of these decades of experience and wisdom under our belts now. That's why I look at talking to a young person not by trying to be dogmatic, because a lot of them don't want to hear it for the very reason that we're saying they estrange themselves. But yet we don't want to see them fall down these dark pits. And that is where a lot of us elders want to be dogmatic and vehement about, no, you can't do this, and no, you shouldn't do that. But yet they are adults and they have their own volition to make their own decisions. We just want to protect them. But where we feel as that guardian over them, they feel that you are being an anchor to them. And it's a fine line with some young people because the attitudes I've seen, it's I get the part about every generation has its own. I do. When I was reading your information, you said something, and I'm going to tell you what you said. You coined yourself the Gen Xer, which you are. But I say to myself, I wonder, did he ever think of him as a young man, what that Gen Xer, would do when his children bring his grandchildren into the world? He's now reached that point where you have a new role, Gen Xer.
I know.
This is what I was saying to myself, because I understand I fall in between the Gen Xer and the boomer. I'm right between them, so I understand it. And I reflected that a lot about you, because you were taking that mantle as grandpa now, and you were wearing it proudly. But you were also looking to turn that grandpa image into something that's much more percolating, I should say. Instead of, as you described, that image as some people want to give us, that grumpy old man or something, And so you came to mind, that Gen Xer, and I recall how the Gen Xers used to pride themselves on being independent and all the rest. And now I said, look at him. He's now grandpa. What do you say now, Grandpa? Gen Xer?
Yeah, well, I think some of it is that, of course, we mellow with age, and some of that is the wisdom that we gain. Some of it comes harder than others. But I think, too, that every generation, group, whatever it is, I think has an opportunity to have an identity that's different. And that's normal. We see it with child development all the time, right? At a certain point, little babies grow up to be toddlers that start throwing around the word no. And then toddlers become, youngsters that start to have their own likes and dislikes, and as adults and teenagers and everything else. And so that's a natural separation and a natural, hey, here's where we are. I think some of it is just wondering, how do these differences manifest themselves when it comes to those relationships and how they view family. And sometimes I think it can be a little strange to us, but as you're pointing out, it's having that open communication. It's having that invitation versus dictating about what these roles and relationships are going to be about. Does that sound about right?
It sounds exactly right. Where do we put ourselves in this changing generation? Because we're about 2 or 3 removed now, but yet we understand how the generations change. But yet we want to be able to hold firm to family without being able to be dogmatic to them and say that you're going to this way and this is the right way, when they're saying to you, no, this is my life, this is my way. Where's the balance without tearing apart family? Where's the balance? And I'm searching, because the answers to that will help in the conversation that I speak of. Start the conversation. When you're able to start that conversation and you have that balance in mind, I think that there will be more of a mellow conversation and more of a listening conversation than just that individual young person is, say here often, wanting to say, here we go again. Here we go again. I just want for that young person to understand and be able to hear us talk to them and know that we're not trying to tell them what to do when we know that they are adults, but yet we want to be there for them to help them through this. Why? Because that is family. That is what family does for one another. It is the power of family.
Do you feel that we get even more power and more connection through that invitation? And that might be a mindset with some of us, that our conversations, our relationships with grandchildren, with our adult children, needs to shift from those expectations that were maybe put on us as we were growing up, that this is grandfather, this is grandmother, this is aunt, uncle. You have a relationship, you have obligations. And now we're at a situation where that invitation is what really is going to strengthen the family.
An absolute yes. You said one word in there that sticks out: invitation. You're giving them that invitation and not an absolute. That is a big difference. Where you're inviting them to come to you and be able to talk to you, and not a you better do this or you better do that. We know that's how grandparents can be. So that is what I see as a ingredient to this formula, because we're still mixing the ingredients up, trying to figure it out. But I say to anyone who says differently, it is our responsibility to keep mixing those ingredients up and finding what that magic formula is. Because just as we know what life is, we know that it takes some people being responsible, some people stepping to the fore, some people stepping to the plate, like we have done. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going there. And I will spend the rest of my days doing this, because I hurt, especially when I see so many young people hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I think that's one of the things too that we see, maybe both of us, is, and I love that you brought that up, that the hurt that's going on, because that can be anywhere showing itself as the anxiety and some of the depression and some of the other things that are going on. It's that hurt that's unresolved, and if grandparents out there can help resolve that a little bit, we're not going to solve everything. I think, to your point, I think that just helps strengthen and provides power to that family.
Yes.
Terry, I want to ask you, if we have a grandparent that's listening to our conversation right now and they're feeling disconnected from their adult children or even their grandchildren, what's a practical first step that you might be able to recommend to them to start to either rebuild a connection or strengthen a connection with a grandchild or an adult child?
Since I've been on this road of the power of family and I've had my guests come on, I learned from every one of them. And we have people to come on from all social walks of life. I hear a lot of the therapists, I hear a lot of them saying about what they would recommend. And you have to give some credence to therapists. It's their area of study. And a lot of it comes down to, again, starting the conversation. If we don't start the conversation, there will be nothing. But yet, I know that's shallow. Start the conversation. I've seen therapists, they put out these 10-point brochures giving you ideas of what to do. There are many of them, and can't call them off the top of my head right now, that you can gain ideas about how to connect, how to make that connection. In fact, that's one of the things that we're going to be working on, is how to bring those two family members together without things being so explosive. That's one of the solutions. But how do those individuals, they must find us, a source that want to help you reach out to your grandparent or your father or your sister or your brother. And we just have to help them connect. I don't want to say, pick up the phone and call them, because we know some may not be ready for it yet. Again, that's not, again, not being naive here. We know that it may take some time before that person, grandparent or grandchild, father or son or daughter, feel that it's time they can now make that connection. That is where I say you must find a source or a tool to use. And a lot of therapists and family coaches, they have that material. I can't give a list of them right now because I've interviewed many of them so far. But that is where I would say find that source of information that you can feel comfortable about how you can make that approach. But there has to be an approach. Otherwise, you'll be sitting in your corner, they'll be sitting in their corner, in this state, in that state, that side of the city, this side of the city, and no one never says nothing to no one.
I love that. And I think too, along those lines, what you're saying is, when you find that approach, that's going to be whoever or whatever is speaking to you in your circumstance. That there's many approaches, but finding and landing on that one that's meaningful to you and that you can implement is probably key.
Exactly.
And Terry, as we start to wrap up this conversation, what's the best way people can get in contact with you, find out about the power of family, and just make sure that they're getting all the great wisdom that you have to offer?
You can start by visiting our website, www.thepoweroffamilyus.com. I'm going to say that again because that is all one word, www.thepoweroffamilyus.com. That's one of the avenues. Another avenue is that we have our social media handles, and that is at The Power of Family US. And then the other one is to visit our site where you can see all of our podcasts at The Power of Family. That one there doesn't have the US on it until you get there. It's The Power of Family.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put these links and everything into the show notes so it's easy for people to get to if they're out mowing the lawn or running errands or whatever and they don't have pencil and paper handy. But
yes, because we have some insights on our site in which you can get.
Absolutely. And you've got a fantastic site. I mean, I've been there multiple times checking you out and all that, and I can tell folks, this isn't just a simple one page kind of thing. You guys have made an investment. So lots of good stuff there. And Terry, thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation. I've enjoyed getting connected with another grandpa, and I wish you all the success with strengthening families.
Thank you, Grandpa. And I look forward to seeing you again as we continue our journey of life.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend.
Take care.
Well, that's going to wrap up another episode of the Cool Grandpa podcast. I want to thank Terry Willis for joining us today and for sharing his passion for strengthening families through communication, understanding, and connection. I think one of the biggest takeaways from our conversation is that strong families don't happen by accident. They happen because someone is willing to take the first step, extend the invitation, and start the conversation. As grandfathers, we may not have all the answers. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, I certainly don't. But we do have something incredibly valuable to offer: our presence, our experience, and our willingness to stay connected with the people we love. If today's conversation inspired you, challenged you, or simply gave you something to think about, I'd encourage you to reach out to a family member this week. Make the call, send the text, invite them to lunch. Sometimes the smallest action can begin rebuilding a bridge that seemed impossible to cross. And before you go, don't forget to visit cool-grandpa.us, where you'll find apparel, gifts, mugs, hats, and other gear created for grandfathers who are proud of the title and committed to making a difference in their families. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this episode with another grandfather who might benefit from Terry's message. Until next time, remember, being a cool grandpa isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. I'm Greg Payne, reminding you to stay cool.